Hello and welcome to Startup Productivity in Personal Life, week 3. So I made it to 3 weeks, I guess, and I think that's pretty awesome. You get to see my pretty face today, which is great. I'm probably going to turn off No, I'm not going to turn it off. I'm going to keep it on. And I'm going to go through this. Before I start, I just kind of want to say that it's been pretty great doing this. I've been way more productive than before. And I'm going to go through like all the things I did, like normal stand-up, but I also want to like point out some of the tips, some of the tricks, some of the things that help me be more productive. And the other thing I want to do before I start is to tell you guys that I used MD Note to create today's presentation. I'm not happy with it because while it does give you, this really cool, it compiles your Markdown to create this really cool presentation. It's very small font. You can't really do anything with it. And exporting it just looks like crap, like here. It exports as a really bad PDF, but we're going to have to bear through it today, and I'll find a different alternative next week. So, week 3, let's get started on this. Tips and apps. So I've been using Google's Inbox. Hold on. No? Well, I think my webcam is screwing with me today. Alright. Oh, never mind. So I've been using Google's Inbox for the past couple of weeks. I moved my email over there from my previous host, and it's been awesome. I've been really productive with it. It categorizes things really well. I use it on my phone. I use it on here, and it's great when you can say that you're done with an email or pen an email that you want to get back to later. Having canned responses, like all of it is just fantastic. And I was able to use it to unsubscribe from a lot of stuff. It was really easy to go through all the emails and unsubscribe from the stuff that I didn't want to see anymore. And now I get, a couple of emails a day, and it's great. Whereas I used to get, 10, 20 emails a day, and most of them were garbage. The spam filtering is also much better than my previous host. I used MD Note for presentation, so MD Note is pretty cool. There are some issues with it. You can see that as you change the size, the preview is much bigger than this side, and I have yet to find a way to turn off the preview. So it feels kind of cramped having to write in this space over here, and I looked through the settings and I couldn't find anything that would help me with this. So I'm not going to use it next week, and I'm probably going to uninstall it. It is cool that it allows you to create this presentation, but it's really not worth it. Even MARP, the application I used last time, was a little bit better. I've also been using Paper for note-taking. So Paper is Dropbox's note-taking application. They bought out an application called HackPad, and it's really cool. I talked about it last time. I'm probably going to talk about it this time a little bit. It's just really easy to get on here, create a new document, start writing. It converts. It does. You can write Markdown, but it automatically converts it into HTML5 as you write. So you can write a heading called something. You press enter. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's weird. Oh, sorry, that's the name of the document. So you can write something, and when you try to write a heading, hello, it already converts it. When you do like a dash, it converts it into a bullet point. If you do 2 stars, hello, 2 stars, it converts it into bolded. I think it does the same thing with 1 star. Yeah. So it's like pseudo Markdown. It's pretty cool. I also looked into Logline It. Logline It is like a place where you can share a logline for your story and get some feedback on it. It's pretty cool. Looks like the one that I wrote has 3 reviews. I'm gonna check that out in private. I haven't checked it out yet, but it's a cool community. You can look through other people's loglines, see what they kind of came up with, and you can get some feedback too. And I've been using my Moleskine notebook, which I have right here. It's the Evernote edition, and I used it to do an extremely rough and messy sketch of the plot for the book that I want to write. And I have to say, it's nice to get back to paper once in a while. I have another notebook, another Moleskine ready to be used somewhere. Oh, there it is. right here that's plain. Won it actually as a giveaway on the Type Hammer podcast. I'll mention them probably several times because they're really great. They're a writing community. Sorry about the webcam that keeps just kind of blurring stuff out. I'm kind of moving around and it's being dumb. Let me see if I can just go ahead and I think, yeah. I think, okay, I turned off the automatic focus. Whoa, okay. Figure, default. No? I think I messed it up, guys. That's weird. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my webcam because I'm just not gonna do this again. It's fine. We'll figure it out. Anyway, so that's those are some of the apps, some of the things that I have, some of the tips. I will say one more tip that I don't have, and that's there's an application for Evernote called Scannable, I think, and you basically take a picture of of something physical, of a physical writing or drawing, and it kind of ups the contrast and makes it legible, and it kind of deskews some of the parts of the photo. So that's a great way to kind of digitize your offline physical notes. Velocity. So I wanted to kind of talk about this. I use Pivotal Tracker to track how quickly, or to track the tasks I need to do. And every week it kind of goes through and recalculates what your velocity is. Velocity basically means how many points per week can you do. And points are they're not arbitrary, you assign them, but you do assign them yourself. And it counts up, how many points you did, it averages it out, and it tells you. And it looks like my average just went up to 18 points, which is actually really, really good. It means that I'm going through a lot of tasks and doing a lot of things. I did change a couple of tasks, like one of them is the logline list. I changed the plot because that made more sense. And I just kind of want to point that out. Just because you put down a task doesn't mean you have to stick with it. It just means that that's kind of what your goal is. And if you're going to change that goal, you have to have a damn good reason. And my damn good reason was the fact that I did have an idea for a story, and writing it as a logline wasn't good enough. So I actually plotted it out and started plotting it out, and that worked. I also created extra tasks for programming. So that's another thing, kind of recognizing where a task is a little bit too broad. Once you get to it, it's too broad and you have to break it up for several more tasks. That's totally fair game, and I think that's a great. It's just I think that's the best way to approach it. Like, if you have a big task and you realize it's a big task, add more tasks, and so it's a little bit more accurate. So let's talk about the Markdown editor I've been working on. I did pick the technology stack. I'll be working with Angular 2 and TypeScript, less CSS and Electron, and just kind of to discuss the reasons behind it. So I work with Angular 1 day to day, every single day. I have some background with React and Redux as well, and I did some Angular 2 stuff just a little bit when it was a beta and when it was an alpha. And I've been come back to it since then. I would love to do an Angular 1 application, but Angular 1 is getting deprecated, so that doesn't really work. So Angular 2 is a little bit more future-proof, and it's easier to go from Angular 2 to, at least in my opinion, from desktop to web to, possibly a phone application. And so I'm looking forward to it. Plus, it has first-class support for TypeScript. The reason I chose TypeScript is because it'll handle all of the compiling for me. And on top of that, compiling from ES 2015, and on top of that, I get type safety. So I'm pretty excited about those two technologies. I've worked with them a little bit, but the caveat is that I'm not an expert. That means that I'm going to be a little bit slower than if I picked a technology that I'm familiar with. And it's a trade-off that I very seriously considered. I considered going with React just because I have a pretty solid understanding of doing stuff with React. I built a few different applications with it. I haven't done the same with Angular 2, and because it's evolving and changing, I can't really rely on my past experience with it. Then less CSS, so I've worked with less a lot. I considered using Sass, but Sass has a Ruby dependency. I'm not a big fan of that. I considered using PostCSS, but last time I set it up, I found myself basically like wishing that it had some of the features of less. and less is just, it's established. I've worked with it basically since it came out for like past 6 years. Or 5 years, or however long it's been out, and it served me well. And then Electron, I feel like that's just the default for desktop applications that use web technology issues. So I did try a few different technologies before I settled on that stack, and wasted a lot of time. I tried to use Webpack Dev Server, which I've never used, and that turned out to be a nightmare. I tried to use Bootstrap 4, and that didn't work out because not only is it not out yet, and it's like an Alpha 4 version or something like that, but it didn't really suit my needs. I tried to use Gulp 4, or I think it's version 4, yeah, or version 3. I think it's Gulp version 4. I tried to use it, didn't really work out for me. I ended up sticking with Gulp 3. Then I switched to Gulp 4. And there were some technology and compatibilities issues. Just kind of things not working well together. And then I wasted a lot of time there. I could have made a lot more progress on the application if I could have bypassed those. And that's kind of what scares me about this technology stack, about Angular 2, that I just don't know it well enough, and I hope that I don't get into a situation where I know it's so little that it's going to slow me down. And I guess we'll see that with velocity, and that's kind of the upside of that. Cool stuff. It's very easy to go from web to desktop. So it's very easy to use Electron. I've used it a couple times in the past, not to do any serious applications, but to do some applications, and it's very easy to just go from web to desktop. And Gulp is still great. I tried to use Webpack. Yeah, that was the technology that I didn't know. I tried to use Webpack as my only kind of task runner, but it's not a task runner. That didn't work out. And so let me show you guys what I already have right now. So we're gonna run Electron on the current application. That's gonna boot up real quick. Alright, so I kind of configured it so it doesn't have the border. I tried to do a little bit of, create a few elements just to test things out. It looks like nothing right now, but, I'm working on it. So this boots up, and I have a development environment that works. So if I run Gulp, we can just go ahead and wait and see what that looks like. Still takes a little bit of time to start up, but yeah, let's come back to it. I found some cool Markdown libraries that I'm going to use. One of them is Remarkable. Remarkable is a library that converts Markdown into HTML or whatever format. This is going to be great for preview. This is going to be great for compiling it. And it's really fast. This plugin's configurable, and it's easy to add new syntax, and that's the important part, because to use the format that I want of Markdown, I have to add a few extra rules. And I'm excited about that it's pretty easy to do so. I think that's like the best part of it. Then there's CodeMirror, which is the editor. That's going to be the Markdown editor itself. I wanted to create my own, but realized that it was a lot of work, because one thing I really want to do, and I'm going to show this real quick on Pinflip. I hope I'm logged in, because if I'm not, that's going to suck. Oh, yeah, so I wanted to show off Gulp. It starts, it compiles everything for me. It watches for new events. There's a live reload. I can view this website locally without having to start up Electron, and I'll show you guys that. And it's ready over here. So I can do all of my debugging and everything here. And then when I'm ready, preview it on Electron. So I wanted to show you guys Penflip real quick, and I'm gonna open a random project real quick and edit it. So one thing I really wanted from a Markdown editor was this, being able to have syntax highlighting for Markdown. And I really like the fact that it pushes it off so that all of these are lined up together, right? You see that? You have the two hashtags, and then you have the title, but it lines it up together, and that's really important to me. I also like the fact that it does the syntax highlighting, so I know what's a link, I know if something's bolded, and that was just really important to me. And I looked into what Penflip uses. I looked into a couple of other websites, what they use, and every single website came back to CodeMirror. One of the competitors I wanted tell you guys about is Monaco Editor, which is Microsoft's editor that works on, that's part of Visual Studio Code. And I wanted to use that, but I didn't see anybody else using it. And it's meant more as a code editor rather than anything else. I mean, let's check out Markdown. You know, it still does. It has the lines, the line numbers. You know, it still doesn't really look like. I don't know, and I didn't see much documentation on customizing it. And like I said, every single place that I checked out, they use Code Mirror, so I'm pretty excited about using it because yeah, it's been tried and proven. Writing. So just kind of to summarize this, I got the technology stack. I know what libraries I need to use. I have the basics, like the Hello World setup, which means that from here I can start actually coding the website, the application itself. That's really exciting, and I'll show you guys my payroll tracker setup. Let's talk about writing real quick, and sorry for, you know, I'm not talking exactly clearly. I bit my tongue earlier today and it's a little bit swollen and it hurts, so I have trouble talking clearly enough. So let's talk about my writing. So loglines. Loglines are hard but also great. So what is a logline? Logline is basically one long sentence that describes what the story is. It's like a prototype of a story. It helps define a theme, it helps prototype a story, and it sets the story direction. The logline that I came up with for my book is here, and it's really long, actually. When an orphan turned assassin in training disobeys killing her target, she is thrown into the lower ranks of the guild, working as a servant, trying to work her way up, only to discover her parents' killer walk in the hallways, and finding a record that showed her village's demise was paid for, not random. And now she must find out the reason why her village was a target, and more importantly, who was responsible for it. It's not the best logline. I wrote a whole list of loglines. Let me show you guys what that looked like. Whoa, bam, whole list. But it sets up what I wanted to talk about. There's a girl, she's an orphan. She's an assassin in training at an assassin's guild. She disobeys, and she is punished by working as a servant for the lower ranks. She wants to work her way up, but as she's doing so, she sees her parents' killer walking down the hallways. So she's an orphan. She actually saw the death. It was because her village burned down, and she basically sees the person responsible. And then she finds out that it was not random, and her village was a specific target. So it sets up the theme, sets up the story, sets up the protagonist. It sets up what the entire book is going to be about. It's going to be about this girl, assassin in training, defying the guild, trying to figure out what the fuck really happened. And I think that's a good start. And I have the plot also kind of somewhat done. Yeah, I'm gonna say I don't. I discovered the 3-act structure, which is a way of structuring your novel into 3 separate acts, and each act has certain characteristics. I worked at Act 1. I'm working through Act 2, plotting out the book. But as you can see, you'll see here in the plot how it goes downhill. So main character's village burns. She joins an assassin's guild. She fails a mission, serves as a servant, on the run, rescues princess, helps stop a coup. Here it makes sense, and it goes downhill. So I'm not done with plotting it out yet. You see that it's still a task on Pivotal Tracker, but I have the first act pretty much down, trying to figure out the second act. I'm gonna go through the third act. I will say that one of the things that I've really learned from this experience is that it's difficult to plot out stuff. And it's difficult to make things make sense. I used the Type Hammer Slack channel and my wife as a soundboard for some of the ideas, and my wife and just poked the holes through it everywhere because it didn't make sense. And the Type Hammer Slack, the guys there were very supportive regarding the plotting and just kind of gave me some tips there. One of the problems I did was that I wanted things to happen for the sake of happening. rather than, kind of logically getting to that position. If she serves as a servant, why is that? Why is she on the run? There has to be a connect. Just because she's serving as a servant doesn't mean that she's going to run away. And that became, the idea that she sees the person that, that destroyed her village and killed her parents, walking the hallways. And then she finds out that the reason her village was burned down was, it was paid for, and that kind of starts to build up some kind of a story there. And it starts to make sense, like when she went on the run. The Assassin's Guild that's been taking care of her for years, not only put her down as a servant, but she finds out is responsible for her parents' death and the reason why she's unhappy, so to speak. And then the rest of the story doesn't make sense either, right? Rescues the princess from what? Why would there be a coup? You kind of have to arrive at these conclusions logically. So what happened? Plotting is hard, loglining helps. Tight feedback loop is important, and I'm not done yet. So tight feedback loop means that every time I make a change to the plot, every time I come up with a new idea, I try to get somebody to give me a response on it. Does it make sense? Is it a good progression? One of the things that my wife told me is that, well, you're writing a young adult fiction with this central character. What's so special about the central character? And I'm like, why does there have to be anything special? And she said, because that's an important part of young adult fiction. And I'm like, she's fucking right. And so that was a tight feedback loop. And I told her, she's going to run away from the Assassin's Guild after she fails her mission because they're going to punish her. She said, okay, well, she's dedicated her life to this guild. Why would she run away at the first sign of trouble? That doesn't make sense. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense, But it was a really cool experience. I've never plotted out any of my novels, and this has been helping a lot because it makes things make sense. I want to talk about the setting of the story. So it'll be Mars, several thousand years in the future, and it'll be basically a fantasy era. So think of Game of Thrones. Think of I don't know, just fantasy, your typical fantasy era, except it's gonna be in the future. Magic will exist, and the ancient civilization of that world will be basically like our civilization, but a few hundred years in the future where we're super high tech. So ancient artifacts, things like that. People assume that it's ancient magic from an ancient society, when in fact it's just technology. There's no magic, and I thought that would create a few interesting things in the world. Like mythos about Earth, people will look a little bit different. The idea that magic has always existed, but it really hasn't. The idea that the world doesn't progress back to its high-tech futuristic society because there's magic, and it's kind of a crutch that everybody relies on, and nobody can understand how come the ancient society was so advanced and they can't get there, and so on. The upside is that Mars will serve as a really cool map to create the story. Let's talk about the protagonist. So before the conflict, which is her finding out that her parents' killer lives in the Assassin's Guild, and before she fails her mission, she's very confident. She's very self-righteous. She believes that the assassinations that she carries out are very righteous. They're good. And that's part of the Assassin's Guild kind of, I want to say, brainwashing. And she also feels like she belongs. She has friends. She has this guild that takes care of her since she was a child, since she became an orphan, and so on. After the conflict, so after she finds out, after whatever, she's very self-doubting. She's doubting of her own abilities. She feels very betrayed and untrusting, and she's very isolated from others. She feels very alone because once she's on the run, the Assassin's Guild is basically after her, and all her friends are potential enemies. And to wrap this up, reading and gaming. I'm started reading Throne of Glass, which ironically the main character is an assassin, and I've been playing Path of Exile. So I feel like those things are pretty useful in this context. So let's talk about next week. Let me just summarize writing. So for writing, I came up with a logline that serves as an inspiration for the plot. I'm working slowly through the plot using the 3-act novel structure. And let's look through this real quick. I'm using actually this website itself, and it's basically you have it defines the beginning, middle, and end format for storytelling. Where Act 1 is like an introduction, so to speak, that introduces the reason why we even get to Act 2. Act 2 has its own stereotypes or archetypes, I guess, where, you know, the hero is thrown into a situation they may or may not want to be in. You know, things kind of work out, things kind of don't work out, and then you have the climax. And it's a good planning. It really helps with plotting. And outside of that, I have the setting kind of figured out. I have some things about the protagonist figured out. So I'm well off. It's just I was hoping that I would be able to start writing the book, you know, tomorrow. But no, can't do that. And that's my recap of writing. It's been pretty successful. Let me show you what the done looks like. You know, brainstormed log lines, wrote the settings description, and I started working on the plot. Bought the book that I need to read, and so on. All right, let's talk about next week. I'm gonna add some tasks to here, but I really want to finish with the plot. I want to get through Act 2 and Act 3, plotting it out, and I would be extremely happy with that. Let's just show writing by itself. If I can do that. Yeah, alright. This is what I like about PT, it's so great. So I want to plot stuff out. I want to finish the protagonist sheet. I'm writing out who the protagonist is, some of the background on her. Paper has been really useful for that. Kind of, you know, who the protagonist is. She was raised to be a hunter by her aunt. Her parents were fearful farmers that hate cities, so on. And so I want to do that. I want to get through the Act 1 storyline, Act 2 plot, Act 3 plot. Sorry, this is Act 1 plot. I want to get through that, make sure that it's done. Setting some materials, this is more like getting together like snippets of stuff that will help me kind of visualize the setting, like a map of Mars, what the nations look like, what just the map looks like, and so on. So it's not a lot of stuff, but it's pretty big. You can see that plot is like 5 points, just because it's so difficult, and I'm still like doing research on how to plot things out, and all the rest of these tasks are 2 points, so they're a pretty big deal. Next, let me look at the writing editor. I'm gonna be working on the writing editor. I want to get the Angular 2 Hello World out of the way. I want to get the flex grid set up so that I can have the sticky sidebar on the left that can disappear. I want to get an icon. That means I'll have to probably come up with a new name other than Omen. I want to implement the code mirror editor, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but it just has to be in there. And the sidebar listing. So I'm hoping to get to the point where I can actually list all the folders and files in the current folder file path, wherever I'm at. So that would be really amazing. But we'll see where we get there. So this is worth 18 points. So that's already an entire week's worth. And the writing by itself is worth 26 points. So this is like 2 weeks worth of stuff. We'll see how far I get. Maybe it's not going to take that long. And the plot, I worked on it last week as well. So, but yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to next week. I'm going to try to find a different presentation editor. But I've been really happy with how I've been doing things. I will have to say that Pivotal Tracker has been one of the biggest reasons why this works for me. The other thing that really works is just going back and seeing what didn't work. Like, you know, writing out a bunch of log lines didn't really like work. I wasn't able to come up with a good log line. It helped me get some of the ideas out. You know, so that was something that didn't really work. What didn't really work was just trying out the cutting edge latest technology and everything that I spent a lot of time that I could have spent programming useful stuff. I did decide to take a risk in the end by choosing Angular 2 as the technology of choice. Hopefully that'll pay off. But anyway, yeah, so the retrospective works really well for productivity. Constantly being able to see what is coming up next for me has been useful, and so on. But one more thing I want to do before I go is can't I find it? I watched a TED Talk, and I'm going to mention this, called "Making Badass Developers," and it's about learning new things and some of the tips that go with that. So you can go ahead and drop off the YouTube video right now, or you can stick with me, and I'm going to kind of go through this. It's a 23 minute long video, so it's not too bad, and it's a really, really awesome talk. Not as big of a fan of the ending, but I took some notes. One of them is that split tasks and skills into subtasks and sub-skills before learning and getting better. So this is an issue that I have, and actually Pivotal Tracker works well with that as well. So I actually have a learning project. There's nothing in there right now. But you see how I have tasks like Angular to Hello World, and I have Gulp set up, and Electron set up, Webpack set up, HTML, CSS, Hello World, Find CSS framework. So all of these are very, very small tasks. Normally I would just say like, oh, create Hello World, and it will contain all these different tasks. So splitting it up into smaller tasks helps you gain like this momentum and work with that momentum. And it's the same with writing, the learning. That you have to learn in very small chunks. You can't say, I want to learn how to build React applications. You will say, I want to learn how to, let's say implement ES 2015 into my code so that I can compile it. Once you learn how to compile it, you'll have an easier time learning React. Once you start with React, you do React. You don't jump into React and Redux and all this other technology. So you split it up into small tasks, and Pivotal Tracker is perfect for that. And a quote that I really liked was, half a skill beats a half-assed skill. So basically, being able to do a small thing well, beats, being able to somewhat do a big thing. So, being able to, let's say, write code in ES 2015 for JavaScript, or, write really good plots, is better than being able to, let's say, write semi-okay plots and shitty novels, basically. So it's better to have that half skill that works well for you than having a half-assed skill. If you can't learn within that time, it's too big of a skill. So there's something she mentioned, that your practice sessions should be anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes and should take 33 sessions. So that means that if you can't get something done within 3 90-minute sessions, which is a lot of time, if you can't learn something within that time, you have to break it up into smaller skills. So if you can't, fit, learning C#, ASP.NET within this amount of time, you break it up into something smaller. And that was just really helpful as well. Practice makes permanent. The longer you stay a beginner, the longer you'll stay a beginner. This is another thing that she mentioned. I'm gonna start highlighting these because I really like these quotes. No, I don't want to highlight this one. Basically, the longer you're stuck in the phase of being a beginner, the longer you're gonna stay there. The idea is to move from beginner to average to master as quickly as possible. And one of the last points was that, put a skill that you already thought you mastered and relearn it. So it's kind of interesting to look at something and you're thinking, okay, I know how to do this, and then putting it back into the bucket of, I need to learn this, because relearning it helps you with it. And she also had a cool graph that says, this is how you categorize your skill set. You have A, can't do but need to. This is something that you want to learn. This is absolute beginner. Can do with effort. This is like, I can do it, it just takes me some time, it's a little bit difficult, I don't completely understand it. And mastered, that means that you can reliably do something. And the idea is to go through these stages as quickly as possible. The longer you stay a beginner, the longer you stay a beginner. The longer you're in this situation, or possibly even this situation, the longer you're going to stay in this bucket. You need to move as quickly as possible to this one. And it was interesting just learning that. One of the things she brought up was just moving from A to C immediately. I didn't entirely understand that part of the talk, but I just liked the rest of it. This has become my mantra. If I can't learn it within 3 90-minute sessions, I need to learn a subset of that. So that's pretty important. Anyway, so I thought that that would be a cool intermission in terms of productivity. And I think that's it for this week. So for next week, as I said, plotting stuff out and starting the application. I'll see you guys later. I'll have to say that these videos are very encouraging. They're very, very useful to me. And I can't wait to make the next one.